What's going on, guys? Shadowlands Gaming here, and in this video I'm going to be discussing the pros and cons of Destruction and Affliction Warlock in a PvP setting. Bear with me, the arena season hasn't even started yet for Shadowlands, so a lot of this information could change as we head into Season 1 of Shadowlands. But I'm really hoping that I can try to educate some people on some of the advantages of each spec, both Destruction and Affliction, and some of their cons. So let's get after it, guys. So I want to start out by saying sorry, Demonology Warlocks, if you are a Demo lock that's trying to hop into PvP and you're trying to learn a lot about it. I really don't play Demonology at all. I don't really have a lot of experience with it. From what I've seen from a lot of really experienced Warlock players, there's not really anyone that's going to be maining Demonology. So for the purposes of PvP Warlocks in this video, that's going to be mainly focusing on Destruction and Affliction Warlocks. So I made a template kind of comparing the pros and cons between Destruction Warlocks and Affliction Warlocks. Keep in mind that most of these pros and cons pertain more to how each spec deals their damage, their survivability, as well as some things that they bring to each team that they fight with. So to start with, Destruction Warlocks here, their first pro that I've listed is that they have large and relatively quick single target damage, with their Chaos Bolts and Infernal Aura applying damage to whoever it is they're attacking without the feeling of being really globally starved. I'll go over that a little bit more as I'm talking about Affliction Warlocks on exactly what I mean by that. But with that being said, the con of Destruction's Warlocks damage is that a lot of their damage comes from long cooldowns, mainly your Infernal drop as well as your Dark Soul, and Trinket if you're using that, or Blood Fury for your optimized Chaos Bolts. So in addition to that, long cooldowns, usually your damage is always just limited to one target, whoever it is that you're attacking. Yes, you can set up macros to have like a Chaos Bolt go over to Arena 2 or Arena 3 or whatever, but for the majority of things, your damage is limited to one target. So one advantage that Destruction Warlocks have, a huge advantage over Affliction Warlocks, is that they have multiple schools of magic. Your Fear, your Chaos Bolt, and your Emulate and Incinerates are all on different schools of magic, as well as Nature Magic if you're playing a Night Fae. So, meaning that if you get interrupted in one school of magic, for the most part, you're going to be alright. You're going to be able to continue to use different things in the arena to help your team out. Whereas Affliction Warlocks are easily shut down through interrupts and kicks. Another con of them, though, is that most of their damage comes from Chaos Bolt, which a lot of people that see Infernal down on the ground, or even people that are lower on health, are going to be getting behind pillars and different objects in an arena to LOS your damage. I know that's happened to me a lot playing Destruction Warlock, and that's something that we all are constantly trying to combat, is getting people either in a stun to keep damaging them, or positioning yourself in a way to be able to effectively deal damage through your Chaos Bolts. But again, that's something that is kind of one of their downfalls, is that those Chaos Bolts can be line of sighted fairly easily. Another pro of Destruction Warlocks is they have an immense amount of survivability in comparison to all of the other Warlock specs. Namely because of your Chaotic Mastery, which enables you to deal more damage while reducing how much damage you take, and being able to use a double Mortal Coil through Havoc for another 20% heal. Also, they have so many more schools of magic that you're able to usually get fears off more to help peel damage away from you if you're getting attacked or trained down. So one disadvantage is that they're a lot less effective at kiting people away. Kiting meaning if melees are chasing after you and you're gating or something to try to get away from them, or you use Soul Shape to run away from them, you're going to be less effective at doing that, because Destruction doesn't have the 50% slow, which comes from Corruption like Affliction Warlocks do. But I mean, you still have Curse of Exhaustion, which you can use to help in that aspect. It's just not going to be as effective as if you were gating as an Affliction lock with all of your targets already having Corruption on them. So another pro of Destruction Warlocks is that they have a really high utility kit, meaning that you're able to adapt to different comps a lot better, I feel, than Affliction Warlocks in the difference of your legendaries and in your level 45 talent row. As shown here, I kind of covered this in my Destruction Warlock guide video, but essentially, you know, if you're versing a team that's going to be stunning you a lot more, then you're able to use like a Roaring Blaze kind of a build with the legendary that gives you additional conflagrate charges to keep some good sustained damage without having to worry as much about getting silenced from your schools of magic, things like that. Or you're able to run, you know, Reign of Chaos for a more kind of sit back and turret and do just some mad damage while hoping to spawn additional Infernals. But again, with that being said, probably the main con with this is that your damage is really limited to just one target. So you're mainly securing your kills through a very effective CC chain while blowing up one single target. Those are some of the pros and cons about Destruction Warlocks. Just a quick overview of that. Really high, somewhat quick damage output to a single target, relying on long cooldowns, having more survivability through your Chaotic Mastery and double coils, a little less effective in kiting through slows and things like that, like Affliction, but also offering a little bit more utility through being able to switch up a lot more of your talents and legendaries to have a higher impact in the arena. Moving on to Affliction Warlocks. Affliction Warlocks have been getting a lot of attention since Shadowlands has been mentioned, ever since they really did the rework on them. Which Affliction Warlocks are great, they're awesome, that's what I'm maining right now in Shadowlands, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. But they definitely have a lot of issues, and so I'm going to kind of cover those really quick with Affliction Lock. So one of their main pros is that they deal a large amount of damage to usually an entire team, causing a spread pressure for the healer that sometimes is just too overwhelming. So you're able to just kind of rot and dot and apply that pressure. Malefic Rapture helps you a lot in applying some really good kind of chunky damage as you're, you know, spamming Malefic Rapture. With that being said, you also have access to 2 of your instant cast dots, your Agony and your Corruption, so that you're not getting kicked, you know, while trying to do any of that. You are able to at least apply 2 of those. One of the main cons to Affliction, however, is that your damage takes a long time to ramp up, leaving you globally starved and vulnerable to quick damage output classes, particularly with melees right now. And a lot of you that are playing Affliction Warlock that have been doing skirmishes and things like that, you've probably noticed that. You know, a skirmish will start and you'll come out and start trying to dot up melees that are charging at you, and by the time they get to you, they just start popping cooldowns, and it almost seems like the entire rest of the fight becomes about you trying to kite and survive their damage while still applying dots to everyone in the arena, which can be very difficult to do. And Affliction Warlocks are really struggling right now with your global cooldowns. So quickly, what I mean by that is, as an Affliction Lock, essentially you're trying to put up as many dots as you can on people. So you're sitting here targeting multiple people, and you're going to be sitting there casting dots and trying to get as many dots up on people as you can, and most of the time while doing that, it's really hard to go from one ability to the next because you're globally cooldown starved, usually throughout the entire fight. So I feel like that's one thing that Destruction doesn't necessarily struggle with as much, because once their emulates are up and they've casted Conflagrate, essentially they're just trying to Chaos Bolt for most of the game. Another advantage of Affliction Warlocks is their Unstable Affliction. Using this really discourages healers from dispelling dots off of them, including effects. So this pretty much allows you and your other teammates more opportunity to apply effects through either covenants like Mind Games or other dots if you're playing with like a Shadow Priest or something like that. Essentially, you know, Mind Games and the Mirror of Torment that mages have and different things like that. Healers trying to dispel those effects are going to be punished or penalized a lot more because of Unstable Affliction. So it's kind of a shield for all the other effects and abilities in the arena. One more disadvantage of Affliction Warlocks, however, is that Unstable Affliction is a 1.3 second cast time, which may go down later on the season as we get higher haste levels. So if you're not careful, it is easily interrupted. So another advantage of Affliction Warlocks is that once they have all their dots applied and you've popped your cooldowns, namely your Rapid Contagion and your Dark Soul Misery, your dots do most of the work for you. Yeah, you're going to be trying to get in Malefic Rapture spams, but for the most part, a lot of your damage is going to be coming from the dots that are already applied, which are getting tick increases because of your cooldowns. So even if they run behind a pillar to try to line of sight your damage, a lot of your damage is still going to be taking place. The healer would have to cleanse these, again, causing the healer to take damage and silence him from your unstable affliction. So that's a huge advantage of Affliction Warlocks, is that, again, you have your mass spread damage to multiple people in an arena, which once dots are applied, the damage is there. It just has to keep ticking away. You can't really line of sight it, and it forces a healer to have to choose between letting the damage occur or trying to cleanse it all and get damage himself and silence himself. So huge con of Affliction Warlocks is that we only have one school of magic. So if we get interrupted or silenced while casting any castable spell as an Affliction Warlock, whether that's a Fear, an Unstable Affliction, a Malefic Rapture, all of them are in the same school of magic. So if we're kicked, then we're locked out of everything, and you literally have to just run around until your interrupt wears off, or try casting your Soul Rod ability, because that's the only other school of magic you have if you're playing Night Fae. If you're playing Event Theater Affliction Warlock, then you are locked out from everything. Your Door of Shadows and Impending Catastrophe all share the same cooldown with all of your other abilities. So this is probably one of the biggest disadvantages to Affliction Warlocks, is that we only have the one school, making Affliction Warlocks really easy to shut down if you're not careful about how you are controlling your enemies' interruptions and things like that. So another good advantage of Affliction Warlocks is that they have a lot of good support to your teammates. Between your Corruption Slow, helping melee classes and things like that deal extra damage to whoever it is you're trying to kill, and your Unstable Affliction, a lot of your abilities are getting shielded that are used by you and your other teammates, namely Mind Games, the Mirrors of Torment, or other dots if you're playing with another dot and rock class like a Shadow Priest, something like that. So that's super good and nice about Affliction Warlocks. Another huge disadvantage of Affliction Warlocks is that their survivability is just nowhere close to Destro. They don't have the Chaotic Mastery, they don't have Double Coil, so surviving as an Affliction Warlock really comes down to slowing people with your Corruption Legendary, as well as probably Curse of Exhaustion and kiting. Running, using your gate, using Soul Shade to kind of just kite while people are dotted, so that your dots are running them down and you're surviving, and doing all of this while trying to control your global cooldowns from applying all of your dots and things like that. So those are the pros and cons between Destruction Warlocks and Affliction Warlocks that I've seen. They each definitely have things that they bring to the table and things that they don't. Right now it's kind of early to tell which one's better than the other. I think they both bring things to the table that are awesome. I just think that it really depends on your playing style, what you prefer. If you're kind of more of a heavy hitter caster and you like, setting up chain CCs to get off your kills and blowing people up, then Destro's the way to go. If you like, just kind of rotting down a whole team and making the healer really work to keep his teammates up while helping your other teammates out through other supportive means, Affliction Warlock's probably the way to go for you. But with that being said, we'll only really be able to see as the season goes on which one is better than the other. I think they're both going to be really good. I definitely think Destro Lock has a lot more survivability and toolkit as far as switching things up to fight which kind of comp. Affliction Locks looking really good with support to your teammates while causing, again, that massive damage to an entire enemy team. So really quick, let's talk about some comps for each spec. So I feel like right now some viable comps for Destruction Warlock is a Arms Warrior. Arms Warriors are doing a ton of output damage. Super awesome in that they have a lot of abilities to help you as a caster stay alive with Intervene and banners and things like that. They really have a lot to help protect you, peel for you, and still do a lot of output damage towards whoever it is you're trying to kill. The disadvantage in Arm Warriors, they don't have a lot of CCs, so you're going to be primarily the one that's going to be getting off the most effective CCs for your team. A healer to pair with this is either Arsham, Druid, or Disc Priest for the mind games. I feel like this we're going to see quite a bit in the arenas, and I think it could be a super viable comp. Second comp, obviously, Mage Lock. That's always kind of been a decent comp. With Destro, I feel like any spec of Mage really could help you. I think Fire could be really strong because Fire also goes off of kind of a cooldown, high burst damage, rotation, which when paired with Infernal and Dark Soul, you could be doing a lot of damage as a Mage Lock. You both have a lot of CCs, as well as just a lot of overall utility for the team. So I think that's going to be a good comp. The healers here you're going to look for are just your high throughput healers. I would probably put your Monk at your lowest priority with this comp here. Destro Lock Sub Rogue I think is going to be super good. All the stuns and the massive damage that Sub Rogues are doing right now is kind of ridiculous. I imagine you'll see this comp a lot in arenas as well. Getting the stun chain for your, chain Chaos Bolt is just going to be awesome. Again, high throughput healer. Feral Druid and Destro Lock actually I've seen do pretty good. Even with Affliction Lock I've listed a Feral Druid. I think that their overall damage, interrupts and things like that bring a lot of utility to a team, as well as just the overall output damage that you'll need as a Destruction Warlock. So moving on to viable comps for Affliction Locks, I think again your Warrior is a solid choice, probably more so even for Aff Locks and for Destro, because the things that the Warrior can do to try to keep you alive. Again, Affliction Locks are going to be struggling to try to stay alive in the arena through kiting and slowing, things like that. And a Warrior just has so many things on his toolkit to help you stay alive. But really, any other melee that has a high damage output, your DKs, your Feral Druid, and things like that, I think are going to be super viable comps. Again, your healers here are Druid, Arsham, and Disc Priest also for the extra damage, mind games, and in addition to that, having your Unstable Affliction as a Warlock is going to help your mind games to stay on the target. So another viable comp for Affliction Locks is going to be also again with a Mage, but I would try to get a Frost or Arcane Mage. Frost for the reason being that they offer so much more slow and roots and things like that. It helps you survive as an Affliction Lock, as well as Arcane for their chrono, slow, as well as just high damage output. So again, with this comp, you're probably going to want to be going with either Druid, Arsham, or a Disc Priest, again, for the mind games. So last comp, super excited for this comp here. I feel like it also is going to do pretty decently in an arena, is S Priest with either Arsham or Druid. I probably want to double stack Priest as far as having one as your healer and your DPS in your arena comp. But having mind games, having all the different dots and damage that an S Priest does, as well as yourself as an Affliction Lock, I feel like could be really powerful in an arena. With Arsham or Druid as your healers, you're going to get a high output healing, and a lot of your abilities aren't going to be overlapping. That's kind of my wrap up on comps I feel like that are going to be viable heading into Season 1 of Shadowlands. But remember guys, that a lot of this can change based on what patches and things like that come out in the upcoming weeks from now. Alright guys, so one last thing that I wanted to cover in this video is, if you're playing Affliction and you're doing arenas and you're not liking it, and you're like, I really wish I would have gone Destruction, or vice versa, if you're playing Destruction and you're not liking it, you're like, man, I really want to try Affliction. With the way that Shadowlands is set up, honestly guys, I don't think it'll be that hard to switch specs, to be able to make yourself viable from one spec to another. Essentially, as long as you have the conduits you need that I've talked about in both different spec guides, and as long as you have the legendaries that you need, I think it's going to be fairly easy. Now, I was a little disappointed to learn how some of these conduits work, namely your Rolling Agony and Shade of Terror if you're playing Affliction, or your Ash of Remains if you're playing Destruction. Essentially, to get the highest rank of Rolling Agony, you're going to be having to spam pretty much Mythic 15 version of the other side. And if you're wanting to get the highest version of Ashen Remains as a Destruction Warlock, I imagine you will have to farm the higher tier of Mythic Dungeon for Sanguine Depths. Now, that might not be the case once the actual season goes live next week. I hope it's not, but I imagine that it will be, and that is how you'll get the highest rank version of these different conduits. So that can kind of get annoying, having to farm different sources for the conduits. But with that being said, I have learned that you can get different conduits other than the spec you're currently playing in. So this Infernal Brand conduit here, the 184, I was actually playing Affliction when I got this, and I know it works vice versa. So, you know, if you're out doing content in a spec that you've currently chosen, it's likely that you can get a lot of these conduits for other specs as you're just playing the game. So keep that in mind. And then as far as your legendaries go, a lot of them, you're going to have your current legendary probably mostly upgraded all the way, and so you'll have some soul ash by doing Torghast enough to go get your other legendaries for your other specs. And luckily for us, as casters, Haste Verse is really the main stat for both Affliction and Destruction. So you're not going to have to reacquire a whole new set of gear just to play from one spec or the other. So I would just suggest, guys, you know, try one out that you've kind of had an interest in. If you're liking it, you're loving it, awesome. If not, don't worry, guys. You're going to be able to get the different conduits and the different legendaries and switch your spec and play what you enjoy. Alright guys, that's a wrap on this video. I hope that you've enjoyed it, and hopefully it's answered a lot of questions that some of you might have had about which is really better for PvP, Destruction or Affliction. I feel like they both bring a lot to the table. I feel like they're both good right now. I do feel like Affliction is going to have some struggles at the start, trying to learn how to survive in an arena while managing all your global cooldowns. Whereas Destruction has a lot more survivability, I feel like, but is kind of limited to that single target damage. So I think only time is going to tell on who comes out to be the meta spec for Shadowlands. But again, hopefully today's video has helped answer some of the questions that you might have had. So thanks for watching, guys. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them on the video. I'd love to answer any that I can, and we will see you on the next one.